All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the beat and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samuel?
Oh, we've been waiting for this because finally the internet hate reached us, which means we are relevant.
Yay.
But our subscribers are going up too. So if you do like it, subscribe. If you got here because of something that drew you here from a fan standpoint, we're gonna go over the comments first. If you do hit the dislike, leave a comment because we'd like to know why.
Mhm.
Some people did though, so we got things to talk about. It was actually our most controversial episode yet because one thing I would say, if you look at the history, I mean, we've got 350 something videos on here. Our like to view ratio is actually really good. So proportionately those it's like the Brantley Gilbert song, those that like me love me, right?
Mhm.
So you either love us or hate us, apparently, because this was our worst like to dislike ratio. You can't see the dislikes on there, but it is 34% liked, which means there are more dislikes than likes. And we did some things on some other message boards that might have driven fans of the show to the channel, and that we both did some things, so we don't know which ones were more
Yeah.
effective because we did them at the same time and multiple variables. It's probably a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. But apparently, fans of the show don't like us, which I think I made clear in the titles that the last one was the finale, finally over. If that didn't clue you in that we're not liking the show too much, then I guess it's you got your special kind of stupid. But if you're not a special kind of stupid, stick around and let's get to the comments.
Or if you kind of a general response to a number of the comments, I would say is, well, what did you think of the book series if you like the TV series so
Mhm.
much? And have you looked out any of our videos on the book series and why we think the books are not just better, but far superior, which is something we're going to kind of get
The whole
into
point of what
today.
started this whole thing. Uh,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I'm going to save tangerines for last because I like that little exchange,
Hmm.
even though it's first on my list of comments. I'm going to start with Akidama, aggressively bad opinions. Well, and someone liked his comment. So, okay.
Okay.
Uh,
Why?
Yeah, exactly. Paradox Aspect 2532 says, I wish YouTube has a block option so I can never get recommended content like this. Actually, at least on the phone, because that's mostly when I flip through YouTube as I'm walking around the house with my headphones on, you can do not recommend this channel. That's close to a block. I
Hmm.
mean, that's pretty much a block comment. And realistically, any block option you don't even use until you've already been exposed to it. So yeah, I don't know how to help you there. Now all of these I'm actually gonna comment on because they're the people who don't like it aren't watching this video. Uh, but if you did get here and you might not like it, well, you know where we stand at the beginning. Then okay, so God is Love 689, who does like us, says thanks for the shout out, guys, because we do shout out all our commenters because we have so few comments, so we can go ahead and address them all. I'll defs be going through your earlier stuff, which is good because he's gonna that's our book series stuff, and he hopes it doesn't get greenlit for another season. The comment to his comment was, "Ugh, just don't watch." And this is from Lance B247 Upload, whatever that means. Ugh, just don't watch it if you don't like it. And this is the one I really want to comment on. Quit wishing for something that will hurt all of the show lovers out there who are praying for a season 4 because, in all caps, we love the show. Okay, so you love the show. This channel is because we love, or not the channel, but this portion of the channel is because we love the books. And if you're a show lover, you have what, 3 years of commitment to something you sit down and watch on Netflix. We have 30 plus years of reading, waiting, when the internet came around, being part of a community that all was centered around this phenomenon that was the second biggest fantasy series ever to have been written. And so if you love the show in all caps, you have to understand that people who love the books are actually have a more of a right to be critical of the show than you had to comment on God is Love's post there. So if you love the show, well then keep watching because that's all you can do to get it a season 4. Okay. We can be critical because we loved the books and finally someone put it to screen and they did a shit job of it.
This drives me crazy when I see stuff, people commenting on people with actual followers of just don't watch it. Well, first of all, for them, it's actually their livelihood because they make money off of YouTube, but also they watch it because they were already fans of the existing IP that's being adapted.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted it to be good. I've referenced before the graphic novels. The graphic novels are an adaptation. I know they did New Spring and they did, I'm pretty sure they did Eye of the World. I only read New Spring, which was really good. The artwork was very good. Um, Shadversity actually recently had the writer who did the adaptation, and I actually think one of the reasons the adaptation for New Spring is so good is the same reason you're so good at training baseball players because you don't like it. He was not a fan of the series. He wasn't a fan of Jordan's style. He's not a fan of that degree of description. He likes books that have a little more action, but also he said it made it incredibly hard to adapt because uh what do
Because
I
it's
do
deeper
with
than
all
the action,
this?
which is
Yeah,
our
what
one of our main complaints about the show.
yes, is what do I do with this? How do I portray this on a comic book page as opposed to the, 10 pages of script of prose that Jordan has? And so he was able to very faithfully adapt it. And all of my group of friends that I knew who read the New Spring graphic novel loved it. And no, it wasn't the book. It wasn't as deep as the book. It didn't have the details of the book. Of course it didn't, because it's a different media. But it was great to see it illustrated to help bring it to life.
Mm-hmm.
And kudos. He also had the artist on who did it, and kudos to him as well because he was a fan and he really brought it to life. You know, it wasn't much like with Peter Jackson's portrayal of Middle Earth, it might not have been exactly how I envisioned it in my head when I read it, but when I saw it on the screen, I said, "Oh, that's Bree. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's Rivendell." That it fit because he was so dedicated to being faithful to bringing out what was on the page and bringing it to life. We
Well,
wanted this to be good. If you go back and you way back, geez, how many years ago is it now? To when the trailer for season 1 was out, and we just talked about the trailer a
mm-hmm.
couple of weeks before the first episode, and we said, I don't think this is going to be good because it had all of the red flags of modern writing for the modern audience,
Mm-hmm.
but we wanted it to be. I mean, there were a few things we picked out and said, well, that looks okay.
Well, you
That
just
looks
you
like it
just need to go
should.
back to our episode on episode 4 from this season,
Mm,
where I came in and said, "Kudos, you did a great job for once."
hmm
You know,
hmm
and actually, even you can go back to the last episode. Obviously, if you made that comment, you didn't watch us all the way through. The average playtime was 8 minutes. So, on an hour and 45-minute episode, uh, I kept saying I actually do think there's going to be a season 4,
hmm
and that's probably what God is Love was commenting on because I think there is going to be a season 4, and I have a feeling from the way they wrote this season that they're anticipating that, but nothing more.
hmm
And so they're going to try to finish it out in season 4. That's actually my prediction. And I just think the way this season progressed, it is setting up for that. Uh, doesn't mean I think they deserve a season 4, but at the same time, there is a modern audience.
Yeah.
Obviously, there is because they're commenting on our YouTube channel. Okay, so there is a modern audience. It isn't the modern audience, but if you take source material, you at least need to account for source material audience as well, and that's our big complaint here. Let's get to tangerines before we
Well,
go over.
hold on, because the first thing I thought of when you were reading Lance's comment is there's the other part to, yes, we want this to be good, but also if you do want a season four and a five and a however many to really tell this whole story to its conclusion, then you should also want it to be better and more appealing to a broader audience.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
whole point, ostensibly, of making every show now look like metropolitan London or LA is ostensibly to broaden the appeal. Well, people need characters that look like them or they can't identify. Well, that's hot garbage, but all right, fine. For the sake of argument, let's go with that premise. Okay, so you're trying to broaden the appeal on the surface level, on the aesthetic level. Well, what about on the intellectual level? What about from the writing itself? What you sound like, Lance, is which is the Gordon Ramsay show where he goes to failing restaurants and cleans them up and whips them into shape? Is that Kitchen Nightmares?
I think that's
And
it. Yeah. Yeah.
and there are several shows like that, and the few times I watched any of those episodes, it was uncanny how often, whether it was Ramsay or the other British guy who did one, or well, this is what our regular customers like. And the guy just looks at him and is perplexed because what regular customers? You've got, you've got three people in here during the lunch rush, and you're catering to those three or four people so you don't lose them. And meanwhile, every other table is empty.
Hmm. Well, what I would ask someone who makes a comment like that is, what are the things you like about the
Mm-hmm.
series? Because maybe you can have your cake and eat it too, right? So maybe those things can actually stay while the real story is being told.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually one of our big complaints is because how many times have we said, why did they make this decision? They could have
Yeah.
done it the way it was
Yeah.
in the books and still had the same effect. The whole inclusivity and, raciness and
Yeah.
all of these things that they're trying to throw in there. But you could have had that with Jordan's source material because he was racy for the time. He's got a freaking thruffle, with the main character. He's in more than a thruffle. A thruffle would be three people. There's four. It's
Frupple.
a thruple. Yeah, he's got a freaking person who comes back in a different sex body and is actually we're getting insight in them exploring the conundrum that is, wow, I'm a different person in a body, right? And it's just like, wow, we had trans before trans was cool, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
just we had all of these things existed. And you had to just throw it out because I, actually we're here going, why did you have to throw it out? Because
Mm-hmm.
I can't even give the because. The only because I can come up with, actually, Lance, is that some people are trying to piss off the fans of the books because that's how activism works. Go back to Colin Kaepernick. Uh, so yeah, there's a lot going on here that if you just turned on Amazon Prime and said, "Ooh, fantasy series," oh, I like it because there's lots of flashy lights. You can like crap. I mean, people are into golden showers. It's still someone pissing in your face, okay? You're into the golden shower of entertainment that is Amazon Prime, Wheel of Time. I'm glad you are. Enjoy it while it lasts. We're not, and that's who this channel is for.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, okay, so can I get the tangerine now? Because
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
I saved this one for last because this is a yes and section here. So, Tangerine Crossing says he quotes you. I don't even know if they imply Aes Sedai get how old Aes Sedai get in the show, and he brings up the Leandrin example that they showed she had a
Yep.
newborn child
That
95 years ago, which
that one's on
actually,
me. So
yeah,
derp.
yeah,
Yeah.
I wanted to push back on that, but I mean, it was an hour and 45-minute episode. We were already,
Mm-hmm.
struggling with flow there, so. Uh, and the show multiple flashbacks. You said Latra Sedai. We had to look that up. That was She
The
was
Amarillin from the Age of Legends, which I remember a flashback to the Age of Legends. I I think she also might be who Rand is talking to in one of those last flashbacks, the flashback where they send off the
yeah, yeah.
Aiel with all
Mhm.
the stuff. I think that might be her too. There's no indication there that that's centuries apart. Time has passed, but I would not say there's an indication there that there's centuries apart, and they shouldn't be because um the War of Power, the War of Shadow was about 10 years long. And we don't know how long exactly. I don't think Jordan ever gave a specific number. We just know there was a significant amount of time that passed between drilling the war and when the War of Shadow started.
Yeah, and then I think it kind of digresses from there because God is Love is commenting on Moiraine here, but he's commenting from a perspective of the show, which is
Yes.
actually what and then the next commenter talks about Moiraine's age from a book perspective. And so I think that's where it digressed a little bit because that's the problem with the show is it's so divested from the books that it conflates everything. And if you're talking one or the other, you really
Mm-hmm.
have to be specific in the comment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which one are you commenting to? And so this is where it's a yes and. So Tangerine, you're absolutely right. The problem is two things can be true at once. You're right about them doing it in the show, but the other thing is they did it rapidly in the show. So you can point to an instance where they did it, but uh you don't get a very clear perspective of it as it is in the books. Okay. So yeah, you can be watching it, and if you're paying attention, you can see one thing here or one thing there. But it's just like that episode in the first season where they're like, and 3 months later, here we are.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it is true that they did it, but they did it so crappily that if you weren't actually looking for it, then or even if you were looking for it, you could say, well, that was pretty inconsistent. Yeah, because they are inconsistent. If you watch the show, you think Moiraine is that old, but she's not. But if you watch our whole episode, we actually kind of did the calculus on how old she was, but based on her being a novice and being raised to the shawl and all of that stuff. So what was it, mid 40s, somewhere around there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
yeah, yeah, Tangerine. I appreciate your comment, and we should have been more accurate there. And
well, especially
also,
me
I
because yep,
appreciate the follow up to that because
because I actually that was one of the few things, even though it supports our argument of why are you inventing things instead of taking from the source material. On the other hand, Leandrin's backstory is one of the few things they pull off and do pretty well.
Mhm.
Mostly for, I had to look her up here, Kate Fleetwood, who is the actress. But here's what I mean by your a rebuttal of my comment of they're just not clever enough to pull it off is it wasn't. I don't think that was specifically. I said that several times, and I don't remember if that was specifically with Leandrin. But so here's what I mean by that in a deeper sense of implying how old Aes Sedai do because they don't even try to do the ageless face. So I had forgotten about the son when
Mhm.
you meet him because I didn't rewatch season two. I just rewatched season one before three, and from what I remember, yeah, he looks old, and it is odd that she has a son that looks so old, but he's also ill or disabled. And so you're not sure how much of that is he just that old? Is he messed up from like MS or something
Mhm.
that can't be healed? Um, but the other problem is, and then so they don't do that's what I mean by clever is they didn't do a very good job in the moment of showing the age disparity. And by that I mean the extreme difference between how Leandrin looks and how old she actually is.
Mhm.
And when I looked up the actress to see how old she is, first of all, her pictures on IMDb, she is a hot cougar.
Mhm.
She's only 5 years older than I am.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that got us on that train of thought was because I was talking about how old Swan looks.
Uh-huh.
Why are they making the Aes Sedai look older than they actually are in real life?
In
Perplexes me. So if you're a fan of the show, answer me that question in the comments,
Kate,
please.
Kate Fleetwood is 49, 50 years old. She looks like Leandrin looks like she's in her 60s.
Hmm.
That's what I mean by the clever. Okay, is you show us that in season two, and then here in season three we have this flashback, and they do give a date of I think what someone said here 95 years ago, according to Tangerine. I'll take your word for it. So they have to
I
tell
I
you.
think it says on the bottom of the screen
Yeah. And
yeah.
I remembered it was, I didn't remember the exact number, but I remember it was a while ago. They
My
have to
one of
tell
my
you.
things is how did Tanchico not change in 95 years? But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
cities
So,
cities would evolve, but you know.
so why didn't you do a better job of making, I mean, the same thing with that I've griped about Alana is on her red carpet pictures in IMDb, she looks like a Domini seductress. That is not what she looks like in the series.
Yeah. Well, same with Nynaeve, the actress who plays her.
Yeah. Yeah.
I brought up the pictures. I think it was season one when I was like, this is what she looks like in real life. This is what they gave you because they had to make her more ethnic.
Mm-hmm.
They had to say, look at the strong uh person of color, which
And
she is, but she's also she has straight hair, by the way. It's not these
mhm,
intricate weave of braids. Yeah, they had to braid her hair. Okay, because it's Nynaeve. But why did they do it that way? Because it's actually racist to me.
mhm.
You have to do it that way to make her this thing that you want to put out there. Why couldn't she be herself and still be a person of color?
It's a minstrel show
The progressive people are the most racist people in the country.
because they are so obsessed with surface level things. And this was, if you haven't watched it and you're curious, go way back to our preview episode where we said, I don't think it's going to be good because, and not because you can't create something good with this ideology. Okay. Um, you know, I don't think this may shock you as someone who considers himself a historian because I have researched and studied primary sources and written on it and etc. and whatnot. I don't really agree with Oliver Stone's take on things. His movies are very compelling
Mm.
because he is a very good filmmaker.
Well, the modern example right now in the current moment, I don't agree the message they're trying to push with adolescence, but it's a fantastic show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't watched that yet, but from the people
It's
I
only four
have,
episodes. Give it a shot, man. It's only
from
four.
from
Yeah.
from the people I've watched who have watched it, they have said, "Oh wow, that's good." And that's one of the problems because the message is pushing, but it can be done well, but not if you are so obsessed with these surface level aesthetics, not if your primary focus is the message to the extent that it prevents you from telling good stories.
Hmm.
Oh, wait, we can't have this character do this thing because this character is checks these boxes.
Hmm.
One of the more recent ridiculous examples was Doctor Who in their last awful season retconned the progenitor of the Daleks, who were the little moving garbage can guys, because in the original series, he's kind of this Stephen Hawking looking character. He's so old and he's in this wheelchair and he's being kept alive by machines. And they thought, and the Russell T Davies said, well, we were afraid that people would associate evil with disabled people.
That's
I'm
very
sorry,
ableist
what?
of them.
What?
That
No.
someone that in that condition couldn't be powerful. It's very
Yeah.
ableist of them.
Yeah.
I can't wait for next semester because my one of my Wokey class that I have to take is aging, and I'm going to be the oldest person in the class. So everything anybody says to me that I disagree with, I'm going to be like, "This ageist of
Yeah.
you. You haven't had my
Um,
lived
well,
experience."
back to Tangerine Crossing's comment, the replies to it, again, having not rewatched season two, I had completely forgotten about all that stuff with Maureen's sister.
Hmm.
And that's another point is
Mm.
Rosamund Pike does look younger, but she doesn't look younger enough to really drive home that point about
Okay,
that,
so
subtly make that point.
and well, and this is something that I think they should have done because it's so important for the series. They should have figured out some way, and I know the way because it's we've had it for years to make Aes Sedai look ageless. Okay, it's called makeup,
Mm-hmm.
and they should have had a uh, gathered a bunch of the best makeup artists in the world together to say how do we make someone look like a porcelain doll, basically, because it was so important in the books that you could tell an Aes Sedai just by looking at them. So obviously, it was dramatic. This would have been great for the Valda plot, where he could look at a person and say, "You're an Aes Sedai."
Mm-hmm.
But instead, we got, "Oh, I think she's an Aes Sedai because these things were happening." You should have made every Aes Sedai look like a porcelain doll with makeup, uh, or even CGI. But I think makeup would have been better because it would have had that raw feeling to it. And what I look back at is 90s, 80s, and 90s soap operas. All the females in 80s and 90s soap operas, you couldn't tell how old they were. In fact, when I was originally reading the books, Moiraine, you know who Moiraine was? Susan Lucci from Days of Our Lives. Because when I would work on the farm, we would get to come in a mid-morning break as kids, because child labor was legal back then, if as long as they're in the family. Uh, and we would have cookies and milk at like 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, and then go back out and work. And my granny, we called her granny, she would be cooking the midday meal. Yeah, trad relationship, right?
Oh
Cooking the
no.
midday meal while watching soap operas. So it was either Days of Our Lives or General Hospital or one of those old 90s soap operas. And when I started reading the books, immediately when I thought Ageless Face and the descriptions of Moiraine, I thought Susan Lucci from because she was like 70 years old getting awards for these things, but she
Mm-hmm.
looked the same as when she was like 40.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I thought of Ageless Face. We had things to go from. All we needed was makeup, a little Botox, maybe. Give her a little Botox, and she'll look ageless. Actually, Botox gives the uncanny valley where we're like, "Oh, that don't look right," which would have given us Aes Sedai because it just don't look right. That's why the Children of the Light could pick them out just by sight, and they didn't do that. They didn't do the basic thing. A makeup artist. If they can't do the basic thing, they're not going to stick with the good things. That
It, I still have to wonder, and I've heard people say there's some um financial shenanigans going on with these,
but I'm talking
uh,
about something cheap.
but well, that's my point. Is by all accounts, it's not as expensive as Rings of Power. I think though, because the reported budget for Rings of Power was $1 billion, but I think a quarter of that was just getting the rights because that's how expensive the rights were to get for Tolkien because he's so freaking popular. And so it's not Rings of Power level of budget, but it is reportedly a ludicrously high budget for a TV show, especially a streaming TV show. And I don't see it. The trailer for Fantastic Four, the extended trailer just dropped a couple weeks ago, and the Silver Surfer looks worse than the Silver Surfer from the early 2000s
Hmm.
movie.
Oh,
What
even
are you
like
people spending your money on?
look at the Star Wars CG special effects. They look worse than
Yeah.
the toys they used in 1976 or whatever it was
Yep.
that the original one came out. The toys they used with a black backdrop. The yeah, I just don't get it.
Yep. Um,
But we appreciate it, Tangerine. You actually gave the most intelligent rebuttal
Mhm.
in the comments section, and I will let you know in the comments because you're probably not watching this, and we appreciate it. Let's not get too nasty with each other, guys. God is love, and whoever, what was the other one? Uh, oh, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it.
Yeah.
Magales. Well, yeah. It's so yeah, it's
Okay, 998 New Era is the beginning of the Eye of the World, and Moraine was born in 956. So she is 42 years old.
there you go. So she's younger
Um,
than us.
and Rosamund Pike is uh, a little bit older than me. She was also born in 79, but she was born in January.
Yeah, but
Um,
okay, so I would say she looks older. She looks in her 50s in the
all of
show.
them look older. I have been whenever I have looked up an actress, and I had forgotten that Rosamund Pike was in Gone Girl, and she looks young in that. Um,
Which is okay, so let's look at the like
and
cinema
that
from the
wasn't that long
past.
ago.
In fact, we were talking about this in one of the workouts with the clients that watch a lot of shows and they talk about them. Uh remember the day and age Varsity Blues, right?
Mm,
All of those actors and actresses were in their mid 20s and they're playing teenagers. We got the inverse of that, which is all of these people in their mid 50s playing people in their 40s that look like they're in their 60s. So it's just like, yeah, a little makeup, people, a little makeup. I'm not even,
yeah.
I don't even know how to use makeup. And I could probably make somebody look more ageless than they did.
Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about, the main thing I wanted to talk about today is why. What is it about this era of writing and the people doing the writing that makes it so crap? And I came across a number of uh, videos a couple weeks ago that were specifically talking about millennials and millennial writing, as well as what millennials and Gen Z are consuming. Uh, and that got me to thinking about that. And as I said last week, I think we are kind of uniquely situated because we're in that gray zone between Gen X and millennial.
Okay. Can we give Google Gemini some credit for being honest right now?
Okay.
I just typed into Google Rafe Judkins queering Wheel of Time because I knew there was an article on that. And this is what Gemini says. I'm gonna just put it on the screen. Hold on. Oh, let me get rid of my Gmail there so nobody spams my Gmail. Okay. All right, this is what Google Gemini says. Rafe Judkins, the showrunner of Wheel of Time, has intentionally incorporated LGBTQ plus representation into the series, expanding upon the coded queer storylines present in the books. He views this inclusion as natural and central to the show's world, rather than an exception to the rule. Judkins aims to create fantasy world where queer relationships are not othered and are explored without the burden of homophobia. Sourced. I think that's the article I was thinking of too. Let's go to the article. Yes, this is actually the article I was thinking of.
Okay, now you may have to unpack this though, because you've actually read their books. And when they say they're queering something,
Hmm.
that doesn't just mean, oh, we're just making it LGBTQ friendly. This is
No,
just
no, and that's actually the conundrum of queer theory is queer doesn't mean gay. Queer means not the norm. So if you make gay the norm, how do you queer?
mhm.
Right? So this is one of the things. But yeah, that so that's why we're not just if the book said this, remember it said building on what was already there. And we said it's already there, right? All of these things were already there. So if it's already there, it's not queer. So he had to go.
It's a good point.
beyond, right? Because that's how this works. So again, we're not talking just making a show that you might like from a visual standpoint. We're talking that if anything in the interview process of getting a showrunner to go is outside of telling a good story, you should fire that person right away, right away.
Hmm.
And this is a showrunner that had an alternative motive to telling a good story.
Well, as an example, one of the things I ranted about last time and was right there in that article and in that Google Gemini synopsis was Moiraine and Siuan.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is implied in New Spring that they were pillow friends. Okay, all right, but what is that?
But Pillow
That
Friends was
is
also broad. Pillow Friends implied that it could have been a sexual relationship, but Pillow Friends also could have been just crying on each other's shoulder.
exactly
Yeah.
because Jordan understood women better than these people do who think they're so progressive
Mm-hmm.
because a a woman, a young lady, a girl in a high stress situation. Make sure my wife's not in here. Okay, I don't know if I've shared this before, but funny work story from the corporate world and from my wife having to talk to. I don't remember if it was her supervisor, her boss, or former boss, but she was she was talking to him, and he had come to her of I have a bit of a problem here, and I need some help, and it was um and he wanted to know, is this person okay? Yeah, well, I mean, she's been dealing with this and that, but her she's keeping up with her work. Why do you ask? Well, because I was talking to her about, some of the areas where she needs to kind of step up, and I made her cry. She started crying, and I don't know what I did. I don't know what happened there. And basically, he was trying to say, do I have an HR situation here? And my wife is just, no, people just cry. And the guy goes, they do, which was my exact answer. There's no crying in baseball. Um,
Yeah, see, this is where we do separate because if this is why I love actually well-written shows
mhm.
because I know it's a good show if I tear up a little bit. Even if it's an action movie or something, if there's
Oh
a
yeah.
moment where I do, yeah, and I'd probably do it easier than most guys. But at the same time, there's the other side of that. If I need to fight, that there's that too. So because
And
we've
except
always
in
talked about it.
the kind of extreme situations of a child or spouse or parent just died, a guy's not going to cry on another guy's shoulder. That's not how we cope. But for a
No, we go
girl,
do something together.
exactly,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. But for a girl, especially in a high stress situation like you're away from home, you're all alone now, you're in this strange world, you are in a very strict environment in the White Tower, there's a lot of crying. And they
Well,
need each other to bond, to help each other get through. But it
crying
is,
takes trust because
yeah,
is it a display of weakness? Okay, so this is something that probably could be a whole episode on itself. Bumstead, Mr. Olympia, classic division. So basically the most muscular person in the world uh is he talks about crying in his wife's arms at one time, and he took a lot of flack for that. No, he trusted her. And that was the whole point of the story was he was in a point in his life which if you're going to have the best physique in the world, you don't think you're going to go through tough times. And he was at a point where it was getting too much for him. And yeah, you should be able to cry to your wife. Otherwise, she shouldn't be your wife.
all the
The
things I
problem is
complain.
if you're just bleeding all the time, you are
Yes,
burdening her. There's a
yes.
difference between the two. If you trust her to be a solid rock for you, then you can do it. If you're doing it all the time, you're going to erode that rock.
All the things I complained about that we didn't get with Perrin's storyline, and I somehow completely forget that. And I'm so
Was
glad
him
we
crying
didn't
on
get it
file. Yeah.
because these people could not pull that off.
No, they had a
That is an
jokey moment
emotional
where he
scene.
finally tells her about the wolves, and it's like
Yeah,
that was not appropriate for the biggest confession of your life, my friend. You
yeah.
just told her you killed your wife and now you talk to wolves in one conversation and you're joking about it and jumping and trying to get jiggy, right?
Yeah, contrast that with the emotional moment. And one of the things that early on, even if you're not sure about Fail, you like her in that moment because she's the one who takes charge and says, no, 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 you need to grieve. You
Hmm.
don't put on this tough guy act. You just found out your entire family
Family
was
is
murdered.
dead. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Murdered. Yeah, that's even a better word. Yeah, yeah. Oof.
You need to take a moment.
See,
And
I'm
he
remembering that part
loses
from
it.
the books, and I have like my the hair on the back of my neck
Yes.
just came up, and you did not get that from the show. So if you are a show fan, read maybe next time. I'll put it in the comment when I comment to the person who said we love the show. I'm going to put the page numbers
Yeah.
for that scene in the comment and say contrast this to the scene in the show, which was I'll get the episode and the minute mark. I'm going to be like precise in this comment. Yeah, man, I'm still standing up back here just thinking about that scene in the books.
Hmm.
And you could have had that. That's the problem. I understand changes that are made because they don't translate to film. What is wrong with that translating to film? They they tried to do it with him in Atlanta earlier in the series or earlier in the season, and it didn't pull it off. Because first of all, his family's not dead. That was just those trees were old. That wasn't those weren't trees planted since he was there. The tree that was planted since he was there was his quote unquote wife. Uh yeah, showrunners, you don't understand emotion because you've never had a real relationship, I think.
Well, this gets me back to the point I was trying to make, and one of the videos that got me thinking along these lines that I thought was interesting was again someone I referenced last time, Echo Chamberlain, and he did a really good video on adolescence, but as a case study for a bigger idea. But a few weeks before that, he had done a video titled "Why is Modern Fiction So Weak?" And you don't have to go back that far. And of course, we tend towards the sci-fi fantasy popular fiction, but he's even talking about things like Fight Club and Train Spotting and
Oh,
things
two of
people
my
know from
favorite
the
movies of all
movies.
time.
Yeah.
Train Spotting changed my child adolescence because I was like
Hmm.
16 years old when I watched that. Yeah.
And those were popular books
That's why I'm so
from either the
disappointed in Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi because I'm like, I've seen Train Spotting. I've seen what you can do.
yeah, yeah. So that was like the books came out like late 80s, early 90s, and then the movies came out like mid late 90s. Those two, I think Train Spotting came out before Fight Club. But anyway, um,
Yeah, because it was Dollar, South Park Mall, Dollar Theater. Yeah, I'm not going to say the name. I was about to say the friends I went with, but
yeah.
it
But
was yeah, it was that group of guys. We'd go to the Dollar Theater, get stoned, and watch movies. Yeah.
the point being, those were bestsellers, and those are some deep books dealing with some serious emotional themes.
And they were deep
Um,
movies.
Yeah, and that's why the movies were so popular is because even with in differences that had to be made for adaptation, they still pulled off the emotion
Well,
of the source
fucking
material.
Fight Club was the Sixth Sense before the Sixth Sense.
Yeah. Um,
It was a bigger what a twist than M. Night Shyamalan had ever done. You know?
but one of the points Echo Chamberlain makes in his video that I find really interesting because what we're talking about here is one of the first chapters, if you will, is the slide is modern literary fiction has become too introspective. And early on, he makes the comment that so much of modern fiction is about trauma, personal trauma. The problem is when you're talking about millennial writers, so many of them haven't experienced actual trauma. They have
You mean you're
experienced what they
diagnosed with,
call trauma.
you mean you're diagnosed with PTSD because you switched schools in high school?
Yeah,
Had to make new
exactly.
friends.
Exactly.
I actually know that person. That's why I say that. It's just when they told me that, I was just like, okay, yeah.
So, okay, you have PTSD because you switched schools in high
Hmm.
school.
Talking about crying and legitimate reasons for crying. I was watching the draft last night. So let's contrast that, right? With I was watching the draft and they did had a good moment where they brought a family of an 18-year-old who died in combat in Iraq come out and announce one of the picks. And they showed this kid. I shit you not, the picture of this kid. He was 18 years old. He looked 12. Okay. And I'm like, that made me cry because it was just the family of this kid is out there having this moment that it was special. Good job, NFL, for having this program for, for families of people who died in combat. And I was just, that's trauma. Had he survived, he would have real PTSD.
Yeah. Um,
But
the
you switched schools in high school, so you know how to write trauma. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And it's the bigger problem here, and I don't know that Chamberlain unpacks this part of it as much, which is what I want to get into, is so if you've ever done any acting classes, whether it was just theater in high school or something else, when you are taught how to be emotional, I mean, this is where the method system comes in, is what you're doing is you are trying to draw on something personal, but it is, or at least was understood, that you are extrapolating. Okay. Um, oh, here's a great example of something I just saw of Mike Rowe is apparently longtime friends with Nathan Fillion, because they were in New York City at the same
Oh,
time.
Mike Rowe.
Yeah.
You said it so fast, it was micro. I was
Okay.
like, micro penis, microaggression. What is this? I don't know.
No, I'm not casting aspersion on Nathan Fillion's manhood, but a couple months ago, uh, Fillion was on Rose's podcast and they were talking about these things. And
Firefly, so underrated.
even before that, speaking of being 18 and looking 12, um, every time I watch Saving Private Ryan, I'm shocked at that scene because I'm gonna go, oh my gosh, that's Nathan Fillion. I always forget because he's so young and so scrawny, and he his acting is so phenomenal. And if you're trying to remember, wait, Nathan Fillion was in, yeah,
I'm trying to
he
remember that. Yes.
he's the wrong Private Ryan that they
Uh,
find in that town where oh, I just brain farted on his name, and he's one of my favorite actors. He played John Adams. He's in, I think, uh, brain fart. Anyway, and Ted Danson is like the captain. Anyway, and they call up this kid who comes running up, and he looks so young, and it was Nathan Fillion, and he told this story about doing that scene that I thought spoke so highly of him, but then also Spielberg and why Spielberg is who he is and had such a long run of phenomenal movies. Because he said I was doing it and I was doing an okay job, but I just I couldn't nail it. It wasn't quite right. And Spielberg pulled me aside, not in front of everybody, not loud, not just pulled me aside and just me and him. Hey, talk to me about the scene. What are you thinking? Just quietly, softly. It reminded me a lot of what people talk about Eastwood as a director. He hates action. He's just, all right, go ahead whenever you're ready. And that's how he starts a scene. And, and because he said he hated it as an actor of, you're in the moment, you're getting ready, and now someone's yelling action. It's just no, I don't, I hate that. And it reminded me of that approach. And anyway, so, uh,
I would contest that with there is a skill set for that, as I
yeah.
just talked about the NFL draft, because that's what Hut is. You know, everybody's
So,
ready and poised and ready to go, and then the play starts when the ball snapped.
so, as an actor, you often build more backstory in your own mind so that there's a there more so than whatever is on the page. And that's kind of what Spielberg was talking to him about what are you thinking about when you say this line about your brothers? What are you thinking about? And I don't remember exactly what they were in the show, but you know, they're going to get Private Ryan because all of his three other brothers have been killed, and when they tell him your kids are dead, they were killed in action. Your brothers are dead. How did they die? They were killed in action. But they're in grade school. It's like they're. I think he said in the original script that they gave their ages as like 12 and 14 or something like that, and so he's talking about it, and he's thinking through, okay, if I had younger brothers at this age, and us playing together, and so Filion's kind of building this backstory in his head, and Spielberg just goes, okay, what if they were 5 and 7? And Nathan Fillion said he just felt like he'd been punched in the gut
Mm.
because he'd been spending all this time in his head with these fictional brothers, and now all of a sudden you're making them barely in elementary school, and it hits different.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
Spielberg just looked at him and goes, "There it is. Hold that. Let's do it again."
Well, and it's, oh God,
And it's
I've
some of
got
the
I've
best
got
ugly
goosebumps.
crying I've seen on screen.
I've got goosebumps all over because these are real events. And
Mm-hmm.
the whole point of Saving Private Ryan was after the Sullivan Rule, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Listen to Caroline Spine's The Sullivan is their song, and listen to the lyrics and not cry, because this is something that happened,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Change your blue star to gold because the mother just lost 5 children at once on one battleship. So they were no longer allowed to be in the same place at the same time
Mm-hmm.
during war, even if they were all in the military. And Saving Private Ryan is the other two were lost. So they were trying to get this one back so mom could have her child, one
Mm-hmm.
of her children. And yeah, it's just those are the things that those deep stories are what we're missing. And if you want to, poop on our analysis of the show, then you're actually pooping on real emotion that we think
Yes.
they could have done because it was already in the source material.
And
And the reason being Jordan lived a real life
mm-hmm.
where he went to war. He had a marriage. He had children, I'm assuming, right?
Can't remember.
Yeah, I
Can't
can't
remember.
remember either. They never, if he did, they never talked about it. But he lived a real life, and you could see that in the source material. The people who adapted it for the screen are children who their real life experience is what they learned in college, which is the problem with all modern writing, realistically. It
Mm-hmm.
used to be people going to Hollywood with their screenplays, living in their car till they got a break. When now it's, oh, I have a degree in this and this and this, which involves indoctrination, but also
I have a
involves
master's in
no,
literature from UCLA.
yeah, it involves no real world experience. So,
Yes.
so it's actually
And
two bads in one.
and it
And
shows because I want to brag on my son here as I finally got him to start reading again, and this time it's stuck so much so that over the weekend he finished Eye of the World, and he's only been at it for a few weeks, and this is with finals coming up that he's having to juggle. Um and I was so impressed, but also, yeah, I feel vindicated because he is saying exactly what we have been explaining and what we were talking about through our rereads is literally from the first chapter. He's texting me that there's more to Tam, so much more. And
mhm.
there's not a lot of dialogue there, and it's from Rand's
Who
perspective.
we were robbed of this entire season.
Yeah.
Yeah, he needed to be there.
Where was he?
Just that little thing. You know where I think he was? Too expensive for the show. That's where I think he was because he's a very great actor and he had Game of Thrones experience, and they're like, "We'll hire you for 5 episodes. That's it."
Hmm. Yeah, and then you add into that the incredibly long gaps between seasons, and he may have been busy with something else. He's like,
Mhm.
no, I got a better gig. I get a better gig. I'm not re-signing with you guys.
Who knows?
So,
Maybe some of these actors and actresses might actually be fans of the books, and they're like, "What are you doing with this?"
mhm.
Just like Henry Cavill with Witcher.
Yeah,
He was like, "Peace out, guys, because y'all won't listen to me."
yeah, I'm done arguing.
Mm.
I'm gonna go do something that's more fun and less infuriating. The point being, because of that depth, he's able to put that into the characters. He does so many little things right. He gets the details right because he cares so much about this story. He's not trying he's not trying to spread a message, he's trying to spread a story, and there are messages within the story. This is why we spent so long talking about the series, not just because it's 14 freaking books, but because I mean there were times where we would think, all right, I think we can knock out 100 or more pages and we'd get like a chapter because
Hmm.
there's just so much in it. And right from the very beginning, just the way he talks, the way he carries himself, the way Rand thinks about him, and my son immediately picked up on this guy's got a deep past. He's carrying a lot of secrets around with him. Yeah, he is. And so and he you know you first get that oh yeah moment in in Winter Night during the fever dream, and you hear just a little bit of what he went through. You go, oh,
Hmm.
and again, it is because Jordan went through stuff. James
Hmm.
Rigney, pen name Robert Jordan, he lived a life. He went through some stuff, but he wasn't navel gazing. He was using that legitimate trauma to build something else that
Hmm.
wasn't about him. Yes, it's his world. He's the author, but it's not about him. It's about these characters he created.
Well, you see two kinds of people that come back from that is the people who actually get addicted to the combat and who their PTSD plays out in a way that they can't know any other life. And then you get the people who are most against it. I'll give a great example, Jesse Ventura.
Mm,
Jesse Ventura pissed off a lot of people by making a comment that the things he did in Vietnam, because he was special forces, uh, the things he did in Vietnam were war crimes. And he pissed off a lot of people because it implied a lot of things we did in Vietnam were war crimes.
mhm,
And yeah, he is kind of that voice that I think Rigney kind of pulled out of himself through fantasy. You know, one became a politician, one wrote fantasy novels. And I think a lot of The Wheel of Time, which you can take from fantasy, is a warning of how we live our lives as nations and as people. And I think, yeah, the best, just like Robin Williams, the best jokes have an element of truth. The best fantasy is rooted in truth. And that's what these showrunners don't get because they don't even know the truth. They were told something in school, and that's it.
I think this is really the big disconnect between the first 11 books and 12, 13, 14 that were written by Sanderson.
Because he didn't have
Sanderson
the life
is
experience. Yeah.
Sanderson is an incredible technician. There's no denying that. Just look at his volume of work. Look at how many books he's written, how frequently he puts out a new book, and how well they sell. It look, there's no denying that he is a great craftsman, but he's not an artist.
Hmm. It's the Australian breakdancer. She had a PhD in breakdancing. Yeah,
And
he's
it is, you made the point. When did he get his start? Well, he was writing books while he was in graduate school,
hmm
getting a literature degree. That's what his background is.
Mhm. Which is nothing wrong with that, but it has to be a mix of the two.
And
I always tell
yes,
young
yes.
coaches when I mentor, I say, okay, here's what the textbooks say, that's important. But here's what happens in real life.
Well, some of the best, you know, or most prolific and wide-selling pop fiction are the thriller writers, like the Brad Thors of the world. And he wasn't in the CIA. He's not some spec ops guy, but he talks to these people and he has enough life experience. But more importantly, back to the point and the difference between millennial and Gen Z and generations that came before, he also has enough humility and self-awareness to know what he doesn't know and to make up for that in his writing. So I'm going to talk to some people and throw out an idea. And he's I've Brad Thor I've heard on interviews, and he has said, I have come up with ideas and talked to people in that world, and they have said, yeah, that's really realistic. Don't write that.
Yeah.
I don't want that out in I don't want that out in the world. And he said, okay, and he didn't. And
Well, and this is I've we've talked about this before. This is the cure for the Dunning-Kruger effect, right?
mm,
Where you put yourself higher in competence than you really are. The cure for it is curiosity.
mm,
The cure for it is basically being open to the experience that you're trying to write about in this instance, right? The people who are writing these shows are not open. They have an agenda. If you have an agenda, you are by default not open, which is very paradoxical because if you think of the word queer as it's defined, it should be open because it should be not looking at the world heuristically. It should be open to, yeah, maybe that's outside the norm, but it exists.
mhm.
But they've packaged queering, and we're getting the package, and some of us can just see it. Okay, if you just watch the show and you love the show, you can't see the package that's being delivered, and that package has anthrax in it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Um, and so a great counter example to this is Drinker just put out a video recommending the low budget movie that's out now called Warfare. Um, and the guy who wrote and directed it was not a veteran, but he surrounded himself with people.
Hmm.
Specifically, he got the technical advisor was a SEAL who was in the battle that is being portrayed in the movie.
Hmm.
And one of the things that Drinker praised was how subdued the performances or were is no one is losing their mind, no one is shouting beyond what is necessary in a loud environment, when firefight breaks out. It's these were professionals doing a job, and
Hmm.
it's very matter of fact, but they still manage to pull off emotion while being matter of fact.
Well,
It's
I'll stay in my lane when it comes to coaching. You pointed out earlier my strength with training baseball players was I don't really care for baseball. So I can stick to the anatomy, I can stick to the injury prevention, I can stick to all of the technical issues without being married to any kind of tradition.
mhm,
But also there are parts of the sport that have to be navigated, which is like the how college recruiting goes, how select sports go, how transitioning from college to the pros and that kind of stuff. I ask my people that have been through it about those things.
mm,
And then if I have a young kid who's going on to college ball, I can say, oh, I'll just use for initials, RS said this was what his experience going to Texas Tech was. And this is how I worked with the strength coach there because of that experience. And you know, it like you said, I've never gone through the minor leagues and into the pros. I understand the physiology. I understand the anatomy. I understand the injury prevention. I understand all of that. But there's a lot of other parts of it that I needed other people that I can reference
because
for
it's
it.
not about you.
It's not about me. No, it's not about me at all.
And that's the big failing here. And I think that's Echo Chamberlain's point about the navel gazing and the introspective is introspective can be good. There have been, I mean, in a lot of ways, Jordan's style is very introspective because he writes from a perspective. He's not a narrator floating above it all telling you what's happening. It's Rand walking down the path next to Bella, pulling the cart with Tam. All right. So that is introspective, but he has the skill, but then also the wherewithal to know it's not, it's introspective in service to the story and the world and the character.
Mhm.
It is not introspective in that um I'm this isn't a therapy session, damn it. It's a book.
Mhm.
And I think that is I think what Echo Chamberlain is talking about. It just kind of hit me that, you know, people have talked about modern writing being so much like the bad fan fiction of the internet, especially the early internet when people just started posting whatever wherever, and that's where the idea of the Mary Sue came from. It was initially a parody of someone who wrote herself into Star Trek. It was Star Trek fan fiction,
Mhm.
and it was so over the top, it was obviously parody because the self-insert character did everything better than everybody else and everybody loved her. And that's where the term came from. And now
It's the
if
new
you
normal. Yeah.
it's the new normal.
Yeah.
That's not good. And here's all right. I'm gonna send you a clip because it works better if you share. Uh, so I was recently rewatching Avatar: The Last Airbender when I was visiting the kids. So I was sitting uh wanting wanting to put something on that I could watch with the granddaughters and also enjoy. And even now, I was trying to remember how many times, much like how many times have I reread Wheel of Time? Oh geez, I don't know. I think I have watched Avatar: The Last Airbender start to finish at least 6 times, or this may be my sixth or seventh time here over the Easter weekend. And I'm still noticing things like this scene here. So
Sokka,
I'm coming with you.
you're not old enough to go to war.
Pause it real
Fury.
quick.
You know that.
all right, so the setup here is Sokka, who is the oldest of the group, and he's only 16. His At this point, he's like 12-ish here. So he hasn't seen his father in about 4 years. He's been off to, basically World War II. He's been off to war for this long. And he's remembering back because now he has a chance to, he thinks he knows where his father is, and he's not that close, and he has a chance to go see him. But now he's remembering back to the last time he saw his father and what his father said to him.
I'm strong, I'm brave, I can fight. Please, Dad.
Being a man is knowing where you're needed the most. And for you
I'm going to pause often because there might be copyright on this.
Yeah.
right now, that's here protecting your sister.
I don't understand.
Someday you will.
This is why
I'm gonna miss you so much.
So one of the things I noticed was that scene, because it's both setup and payoff. Because when you first meet Sokka, he's like the only male left in the village. Everyone else is an old woman or a kid, because all the other men have gone off to war. And so now he's grown up, and he is of fighting age-ish in an era like this at 16. And so you're paying off the setup that you saw from the very beginning when you first met him, but now you're also setting up more that he has to be, at times he has to be the leader of the group because he's the oldest, but he's not actually the main hero. That's the Avatar. And so sometimes he has to follow. And as much as he wants to go see his father right now in this episode, it pays off of, yeah, I want to, but I can't. Because I remember the lesson my father taught me is being a man means knowing where you're needed most.
Mm-hmm.
And where I'm needed most right now is here helping this guy. That's what I'm going to do. But then it also pays off again later in towards the end of the season, where again he has the opportunity of, oh, hey, the girl that I have a crush on is here. I got to go do this thing though. She'll be waiting for me when I get back.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I've got that. I've got that I can, you know, lean on and boost my morale as I go off to do more, war fighting things. So it is both setup and payoff and setup for some more.
Well, this is many people's stories in World War II, and my grandparents on my mother's side story. I got drafted. We're gonna get married when I come back. That was his marriage proposal. I mean, that's exactly the story you just told. Hey, I got this thing here that I really want, but I got this thing I got to go do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a real life example of that. And that was probably the norm at that time for these young men.
This is a kid's show.
Mm-hmm.
This is, from little kids. My granddaughter is enthralled when I turn this on. She loves it. She also loves the old original Transformers, by the way. She says, I want to watch robots with Grampy. And when she says that, she means I want to watch the original Generation 1 Transformers.
See, I want to watch Star Force. Which Star Wars? The one with Barf. Oh, Spaceballs. Okay. You want to watch Spaceballs.
Of course, that is so fitting. But you have an emotional moment here, and you're also teaching a lesson. This is why boys need masculine stories, because this is a lesson taught better than any explainer that a dad could do to a son. Or when you do have to explain it, when you do have this own moment with your child later, this will be sitting in the back of their mind. This concept is not going to be foreign to them. And too much. This is where this all kind of connects, of me ranting so much about how in the finale, Lan never gets his moment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, heck, even Rand's moments aren't really much of a moment. I mean, that's why that climax was so hollow, because it's okay, what's going on here? He didn't really even do anything. Lan got the Worf treatment turned up to 11. Did Matt really have a moment? Did he do anything?
Mm-mm.
No. Yeah, not really. No.
He got hung
and got saved by Min. Okay,
yeah.
But I mean, that's fine. In the book, he gets saved by Rand. He has to, but he could have had moments earlier, and now this is her turn to have her moment. And then, they all kind of get their moments without. That's one of the things that
Avatar Nynaeve gets the biggest moment, right?
Exactly.
With her Moses moment, and
exactly. Which, you know what? Again, that would be fine if the little things are rant about the chopsticks.
Mm-hmm.
Is you couldn't even give Matt that. So again, how is this impactful? Oh wow, she got through her block and she's doing ridiculous. Well, we already knew she was a powerful channeler, so the channeling isn't that impressive. And the fact that she broke her block, well, yeah, because she is the girl boss of all girl bosses from the first season.
Mm-hmm.
There's no there. There's no suspense. There's no, again, you didn't even have to have Land be there. But if you just would have had his ring float up in front of her, had shown him in her flashback to the accepted test.
Yeah, and you ruined. I defended, for those that hate our show, I defended that Lan was part of her breaking the block, but you pointed it out, and I cannot unsee it now that no, he wasn't.
Mm-hmm,
No, he wasn't. The child was there, but
mm-hmm.
he wasn't. And yeah, and now it ruined. I already thought it
Yep.
was kind of a crappy moment, and then you ruined it even more. So now it's in
Yeah.
the basement. Yeah.
And you know, because I love Lan, he's such a great character from the very beginning. But also I'd kind of forgotten. This is why it's so fun texting back and forth with my son as he reads these for the first time, and it kind of reminds me of those first time feelings. And uh, once you've reread it a few times, you kind of forget. I don't know about you, but the first time you read Eye of the World, you're not really that sure about Lan and Moraine. Of are these really the good guys?
Well, okay, so let me bring childhood into this from my perspective. My late stepfather that passed away in 2020, uh, he was the father we never had, right?
Mm,
And that's an easy story to tell. Okay, so because my real father was a wannabe rock star that was all over the place, left me homeless at one point. My first stepfather was a sadistic asshole. And then there was my late stepfather that he kind of came in at the end, and it was tragic when he passed because we finally had the dad we wanted.
mhm.
That's an easy story to tell, actually, though, because all you need to be is just kind of pretty good to be that person that the kid that had the bad things goes for it. Your dad was another example, right? He was another, because I was like, oh, that's what a parent is like, right? You brought that up in a previous episode. Uh, but what we have with Matt, Rand, and Perrin is Lan coming in and doing something over and above already great role models. Because Rand had Tam, Perrin had Master Luhan, and Matt had Abel, right? But not the show Abel, the book Abel,
Yeah.
right? You know, and Lan came in and said, "Here's the thing you missed, though." Which Tam could have provided that, but he was trying to protect Rand from that world, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
Lan came in and said, no, here's real life. So Tam's failing was actually trying to shelter his child. He actually became too maternal instead of paternal.
Mm,
He should have been more evil exists in the world, and here's how you deal with it, at
mhm.
least more so than he did, but he got comfortable in Eamon's Field. So Tam's failing was that he got comfortable and tried to shelter his child, where Lan came in and said, no, this is the real world. And so,
That's a good point. Is that I hadn't even thought about that because Tam is such an awesome character, but he's not perfect.
no, he's not.
Not none of the characters are perfect. That's why they're so awesome.
We see Tam's progression as he actually realizes that in the last book. I shouldn't have protected you so much.
Hmm, hmm. And now here we are at the end, so I need to give you this final lesson, which
Mm-hmm.
is why that scene is so phenomenal. When
Mm-hmm.
that sparring scene together and why I love it so much. Um, and you know, we've been talking about adolescence, the show and what it
Mm-hmm.
means and what it kind of says. And um
Can I give
y-
spoilers on this?
yeah, just but the point is that if you don't want those kind of outcomes, if you don't want boys who act like that, you need to give them stories
Mm.
that teach them prop masculinity properly defined,
Mm-hmm.
masculinity within its context. That 30 seconds from a children's cartoon, being a man is knowing where you're needed most.
This is a struggle too as a parent, because I mean, I'll give you my own struggles. My son wants to just sit and play video games all day long, right?
Oh,
And he's in this mode of, oh, you make him do something, he's like, oh, I'm grumpy now, all of this stuff. And it's just like, yeah, that's exactly what they were talking about in the show. Uh, and the last episode of the show, again, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it, tune out for like a minute here if you haven't watched it and you want to.
spoiler alert, jazz hands. Haven't done that in a
Jazz
while.
hands, yeah. The dad, the episode ends with the dad crying because he was trying to figure out where he went wrong.
Hmm.
And I felt that, because there was so much about the main character and my son that have in common. And you're like, where am I going right? And where am I going wrong? Uh, we're in a modern era, which, I don't have to defend myself from a bear or hunt the deer to survive. And what lessons am I giving my son that he needs to hear that is going to make him not vulnerable to that kind of thing? Which it is statistically outside the norm for that story to exist, but it's possible.
Mhm.
It is possible, because if you train a child to be overly emotional, especially a young boy, that often ends up with a violent result, because over emotional boys are more violent. That's why liberal men are more violent than conservative men, because they're overly emotional. And yeah, I know where I stand. I know genetically where he gets his stuff from, and I could be volatile if I didn't do things to stave that off. Okay. So where am I going right? Where am I going wrong? You're correct. These stories are important for showing the right path to positive masculinity. The problem is all masculinity is considered toxic now.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And then
And,
you hold it back till you blow up.
and this is why the sequel to Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Legend of Korra, was such a flop and was so divisive, is because in the intervening years between when this show ended and when they started up that show, the message, you know, pay your royalties to Critical Drinker, the message had begun to effuse itself through pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
And the character was a complete Mary Sue. And I didn't have a problem. Me and my son, we watched the first season and we didn't have a problem with it at first because there are some similar characters in the original series. They learn lessons because they have to.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's one who is a villainess. Oh no, a girl who's bad, and she is bad, and she doesn't learn her lesson, and it leads to her downfall.
Well, let's get back to Wheel of Time and this the finale. Nynaeve, what lesson did she learn?
She's awesome. She has to believe in herself.
Yeah. What lesson did she learn in the books? People depend on me. That's what she learned, because she saved Rand in the book. She had, not Rand, Lan in the book. She had her moment. He is this badass person and he can do nothing about the situation we're in right now.
Mhm.
I need to come through, and that broke her block. You
Well,
don't get that
yeah.
from the show. You get, oh, I'm overly emotional right now, and this thing came through. I brought it when it counted, just like the end of season 1.
You know, I think part of their problem is, and maybe I should have dug out, is it Lord of Chaos or Crown of Swords where that happens? Maybe I should have dug out the scene to read from it, but I think their problem with that scene is they don't understand what surrender means. Because I'm paraphrasing, but basically
surrender would be grape without the G.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What RJ says there is Nynaeve did something for the first time in her life. She surrendered.
He those exact words, I believe. Yeah.
Oh no, you that's weakness. You can't. No. She is realizing that surrender, where you have to open yourself up to Saidar. That is it's Bruce Lee being water. That is what he means by surrender. Biblical.
Put it in God's hands. You know,
put it in God's hands.
Yeah, it's Bruce Lee. It's Buddhist. It's Christian. It's all of these things. Yeah,
all of these millennia old philosophical traditions that are basically telling you it's not all about you, and you can't do it all on your own. Nynaeve's problem, the reason she had a block, is because she always tried to force her way.
Because well, honey, raised by a man.
She is, as you pointed out from the very beginning, she is the most masculine character in the series, which seems odd in where you have Bail Doobie Doobie Doo Doman's wife. I'm just brain farted on her name. She has 2 names. Yes. So
Leolwyn is her second name.
Yeah, Leolwyn. She is physically imposing. Okay, she is the girl from Game of Thrones. What's her name?
Brianna. Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
why am I remembering all these names and I can't remember the person I talked to yesterday?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. But you know, so she is physically imposing. It's she's the most masculine. Not psychologically, not mentally. It's Nynaeve, without a doubt. If you are allowed to know anything about feminine versus masculine traits, emotions, psychology, it's Nynaeve. And she kept running headfirst into that brick wall because, by golly, I'm going to knock it down.
Pavara's kind of there too. Yeah.
Pavara's kind of there.
That's why that relationship was so fun, and I think our commenter on that, because it is more of a modern relationship. It is the girl boss with the more open to experience guy, which is I think the dynamic that was intended there, which is great because we needed that too. We needed that going forward. But I don't want to derail us.
The point being, in that moment, is she's growing. That surrender is not giving up. It's actually moving forward. She kept running headfirst into the door, and now she's just going to step back and let the door open and walk through.
I have one client that I always say, I know it's you walking through the door, even though I am not looking that way, because you're pulling on the knob before you fully opened it, right? And that was Nynaeve.
and the other thing about that scene that I think needs to be reiterated is as I said last time, and I was taking notes on this, when I saw it coming, I knew what was going to happen, and I thought they're going to take away Lan's moment. And then I immediately realized, no, that's wrong, because it wasn't his moment. Yeah, he had that awesome male hero moment of diving in to save his girl, but she broke the block and burst out of the ship on her own. Yeah, it was their moment.
As a reader of the series, I never got that it was Lan's moment. I always got that it was her moment.
But to me, no, I think neither one. It's their moment, and that's why it's so good, because they yin and they yang. It is they form even before the bond passes to Nynaeve. They form the perfect Aes Sedai warder bonded pair.
Yeah, and Yeah, we're gonna have to kind of close this out here because this is the something that we could. The problem with this book series is you could have a 3 hour conversation about any one moment.
Hmm.
And I think that's where we're kind of going here. So I love the thought progression we're going on, but at the same time, I do have a time limit here. Uh, and also people see a 3 hour video, they're less likely to click on it. We're already about an hour and a half or so. Uh, if you listened this far, this is why the series is falling short, right? Because there was already the things that needed to be there already were there. But the problem is underlying those messages are things that a lot of modern writers call problematic. If you hear the word problematic, you know it's already a red flag, right? So what you just brought up is exactly what has to happen for a successful marriage.
Mm.
I want this, says woman. But guess what? You bear the burden of pregnancy. You have to, there's a lot of surrender that goes along with making a child
That's a good
as the
analogy.
female.
Yeah.
It's not an analogy, it's the truth.
Well, so I had never thought about that before, but I wonder if that was a purposeful thought on Jordan's part for how Sidar works.
Oh, no, I already equated it in previous episodes when we were going through
Okay.
the books. But also I equated it to orgasm too. Because no, but
Yeah.
this is not a dirty thought. This is a that has to be that way for it to work. Because this is what a lot of guys that don't understand is pregnancy sucks. Taking care of a small child is very difficult. Those two things combined is why humans have evolved for mechanisms for the guy to stick around, which has its ups and downs because male jealousy also piggybacks on that, right? Because paternal certainty, right? Uh, but on the flip side is you have to, this is where the Bible got it right, but I think it worded it wrong, is a female has to depend on the man. You become dependent as soon as you become pregnant. And that's just the way it is. I'm sorry. You take Western society out of even with Western society in the equation, you become at least semi-dependent
Mhm.
on the
On
man,
someone. You're either going to be dependent
on the
on the
state
man
or
that
the
got you
man.
pregnant
Yeah, yeah,
or some charity or some welfare. Yeah.
yeah. You're either dependent on the state of the man. And personally, this is why I hate this fight because I would rather be dependent on the person I love than the person that is in charge of
Yep.
millions of people that he doesn't even know, right? So, uh, if you have a child or you become pregnant, you have to surrender something. It doesn't mean you can't be strong
Mhm.
because you got to be
Mhm.
strong to just go through the damn process.
Yeah.
And that is something that is lost on these writers because, first of all, they probably don't have children, or if they do, they did it in a way that was not very traditional. I'll use those words, uh, and they're jaded. So that's even worse because if you're
Yeah.
jaded, you're worse than inexperienced. Uh, and so they don't understand that. And Jordan wrote that. I am 100% convinced with Harriet's help on the situation of getting the female mind actually right. And the showrunners don't know that because they don't even have a full prefrontal cortex at this point. So
They can't admit there is a female mind. It's just no, it's
yeah, I
just a
wasn't
male,
going to go
it's just
there,
a
but you
mind.
did. But yeah,
It's
it's true.
just a
Yeah,
mind. They're
yeah.
interchangeable. Whatever. Okay, sure. Anyway,
Except that it's
well,
genetic. It's
next
they can't
time,
help it.
I don't know what we're talking about. We'll see what's in the news and where we go from here on Wednesday. But next we'll have time because I don't think we're quite done here yet because we had talked about going back to the Forsaken. I think we need to do Mog-Hideon because of this season.
Let's combine Moghedien and Asmodean, the two weakest.
Oh yeah, we talked about doing that because there are some
Yeah.
interesting parallels there.
Yeah,
Um,
there's interesting parallels. They're also the two weakest, so we can get them out of the way. But I mean, I've been chomping at the bit to do Asmodean because he's my dad. If you,
I had never thought of that before.
but it's true. He really is, and it, it uh, so it has a personal tinge to it. But also, I've spent a lot of time in my life as an adult trying to understand. You always want to understand why things happened in your childhood, and so I've spent a lot of time trying to understand him. And when you read Asmodean, it parallels so much that maybe I just need to get it off my chest. I don't know. Uh,
Well, so you will bring in the psychology, and I
mhm.
will dig through the Q&As and pull up some things that RJ has said about these characters, as well as maybe uh some some clips from the books to point out who these people are. And we'll do kind of a deeper dive on who these characters are supposed to be, because again, I don't know what the hell that was in in season 3. I don't know who that was, but it wasn't Mock Gideon.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
are
Yeah,
we going to get a return of Freud with the manipulative woman?
I was just going to bring up Freud because not well, yes, we are going to get some of that, but uh, one of my pet peeves of psychoanalysis now is they all poop on Freud, but 95% of what he said is what they do. They just pick that 5% that he was kind of like off his rocker with to say he was stupid. And I'm like, yeah, that's like saying Newton got one thing wrong in an equation, right? It just doesn't fit. Uh, but he's completely correct when you say understanding yourself actually in great part is understanding your parents.
I
And
just
yeah, we just have to go down that route. So we're gonna get very Freudian on
so
this one.
I just had a thought, and I've never thought of this before, and so I want to say it out loud so I remember it and see if what any of you other nerds think. It just dawned on me. Could you say that Ravine is the masculine version of Moghedien?
I'll have to think
Because
about that one. Uh,
he is also a manipulator, but
mhm.
he does it differently. It 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 was one of the bright spots of the series was Ravine, the way he
Hmm.
was written, but also kudos to that actor for a great job.
Hmm.
But then also one of the failings, because then he disappears, and when he comes back, he doesn't do anything.
It's kudos to the actor for doing a great job.
Yeah.
But I have to really throw darts at the showrunners and the writers because maybe you could have got the same actor in another position. But one of the shticks of Ravine in the book series was that you didn't actually expect him to be subtle
Mm,
because he was such a hulking masculine man.
hmm hmm
So you actually were surprised by the machinations because you would expect him to have been forceful and alpha and all of these things. And you lose that with the fact that they cast someone who pulls off you would actually expect this person to stab you in the back look. And I think that was actually a failure on the meta level, though I'm not disappointed with the performance on that.
Yeah. Well, I think I know what we're doing the next 2 weeks then, because this is after Moggy and Asmodean. I think we should get
We might be
diving
able
into
to get
Ravine.
Moggy and Asmodean and Ravin all in one.
I don't think we can do Ravin all in one. I'm nervous that we'll be able to get Moggy and Asmo all in one. So
Okay, so we'll
we'll
start
try and keep
Moggy.
it
Yeah,
more
we'll do Moggy,
concise.
then Asmo, then and we'll just see where it lines up. Yeah. So this is gonna
All
be our
right.
Saturday episode, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we'll
okay.
do that next Saturday, and Wednesday we'll see. I don't know. Maybe World War III will finally break out, and we'll have something to talk
Oh
about.
God. Ugh. Oh,
Yikes!
did you watch that video that I sent you?
Which one?
The one that I said if you want to do another Sunday school.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we might get into that because I hadn't watched that yet. I was going to do that
Yeah, just a tease. It's Peter
Sunday.
Boghossian, former Portland State liberal ethics professor,
Hmm.
philosophical professor, and Dad Saves America is the host of the show, and they have a nice religious debate on dignity, treating people with dignity. So it's actually a really good debate, but I think there's the whole time I'm screaming internally screaming at the screen, you should have just said this.
Mm.
And that was from the Bogosian side, because I'm a big fan, because I think we actually think a lot alike. He's also one of the authors of the hoax papers, but then I think Heath would actually be screaming the exact same thing at David, who's the other side, the Dad Saves America, saying you should have just said this. And so we might just come on and just say the things that we thought they should have said, and see if that helps.
All right. Well, that actually might be an interesting segue into Malkidian and Asmodean, because I have some thoughts on morality without a god, or in the world of Wheel of Time, the creator.
Well, and it's also the basis for why we should treat people with dignity, because they agree that we should. But they have completely different reasons for agreeing that we should, and they debate about that. And it's a very friendly debate, and I think we could have a friendly debate on that as well. And God is Love is probably going to side with you, and I don't think we have any followers that are going to side with me, because for some reason more people that think like I do like this woke shit, and I'm trying to fix that.
All right. Well, we'll see y'all then.
Later.